The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Kensington Palace as Princess Charlotte walked quietly through the gardens. At 8 years old, she had always found peace in these early hours before the palace came alive with its usual bustle. The roses were in full bloom, and their sweet scent filled the air as she made her way to her favorite bench near the fountain. Charlotte was not like other children her age. Being third in line to the throne meant her life was carefully planned, every moment scheduled, and every action watched. But in these quiet morning moments, she could simply be a little girl who loved flowers and dreamed of adventures beyond palace walls. As she sat on the stone bench, feeding breadcrumbs to the ducks in the fountain, she heard familiar footsteps on the gravel path. It was Sergeant Major Williams, one of the Queen's Guard who had been protecting the royal family for over 15 years. His red uniform was perfectly pressed, his black bearskin hat standing tall and proud. "Good morning, Your Highness," he said with a respectful bow. Charlotte had always liked Sergeant Williams. Unlike many of the other guards who remained stone-faced and silent, he would sometimes share a kind word or a gentle smile when no one was looking. "Good morning, Sergeant Williams," Charlotte replied politely. "The ducks seem extra hungry today." Williams smiled slightly. "They know a kind heart when they see one, Your Highness." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of racing footsteps and loud laughter. Three boys, all around 10 to 12 years old, came running around the corner of the palace wing. Charlotte recognized them immediately. They were Tom Parker Bowles' sons, visiting for the summer holidays. Tom was Queen Camilla's son from her first marriage, making these boys Charlotte's step-cousins of sorts. The oldest boy, James, spotted Charlotte immediately. His face lit up with a mischievous grin that made Charlotte's stomach tighten with worry. James had always seemed to enjoy making her uncomfortable during family gatherings, but with her parents and grandparents usually nearby, he had never gone too far. Well, look what we found," James called out to his younger brothers. "It's the little princess, all alone with her birds." Charlotte stood up quickly, clutching her small bag of breadcrumbs. "I should go back inside," she said quietly to Sergeant Williams. But James and his brothers had already surrounded the fountain area, blocking her easy path back to the palace. "Oh, don't run away so fast," James said with fake sweetness in his voice. "We just wanted to play with our dear cousin." Sergeant Williams stepped slightly closer to Charlotte, his trained eyes assessing the situation. These were family members, children, but something in the oldest boy's tone set off his protective instincts. "Maybe we should see how well princesses can swim," suggested Marcus, the middle brother, pointing at the fountain. "Or maybe we should see if she's really as special as everyone says," added the youngest, Oliver. Charlotte's heart began to race. She looked toward the palace, hoping to see one of her parents or even a footman, but the courtyard remained empty except for them and Sergeant Williams. "Boys," Williams said in his calm but authoritative voice, "perhaps you'd like to find some other activity for this morning." James looked at the guard with defiance in his young eyes. "You can't tell us what to do. We're family. Our grandmother is the queen consort." "Yeah," Marcus chimed in. "You work for us too." The situation was becoming more tense by the moment. Charlotte tried to step around the boys, but James moved to block her path again. "Where are you going, cousin?" he asked with that same false sweetness. "We haven't had our fun yet. I want to go back to my room," Charlotte said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we just got here," Oliver said, reaching out to grab her arm. That's when Sergeant Williams stepped forward, placing himself between Charlotte and the boys. "I think that's quite enough," he said firmly. James's expression darkened. "You can't stop us. We're not doing anything wrong. We're just playing with family." But Charlotte was no longer listening to their words. Her breath was coming in short gasps, and tears were beginning to form in her eyes. The feeling of being trapped, of being unable to escape, was overwhelming her small frame. "Please," she whispered, "I just want to go home." The boys seemed to find her distress amusing rather than concerning. James laughed and said, "This is your home, princess, unless you're not brave enough to stay." Marcus picked up a small pebble from the path and tossed it into the fountain, splashing water toward Charlotte's dress. "Oops," he said with a grin. Charlotte flinched and took a step backward, but there was nowhere to go. The fountain was behind her, and the boys were in front. Sergeant Williams could see the panic building in the young princess's eyes. "Your Highness," he said gently, "would you like me to escort you back to the palace?" Before Charlotte could answer, James spoke up again. "She doesn't need an escort. She needs to learn to stand up for herself. That's what real royalty does." "Yeah," agreed Oliver. "Stop hiding behind the guards all the time." The tears that had been threatening finally began to fall down Charlotte's cheeks. She tried to wipe them away quickly, but the boys noticed immediately. "Look, she's crying," Marcus said with delight. "The princess is crying because we're here." "Maybe she's not as tough as everyone thinks," James added. "Maybe all that royal training doesn't mean anything." Charlotte's shoulders began to shake as she tried to hold back sobs. The morning that had started so peacefully had turned into her worst nightmare. She felt small and helpless, trapped not just by the boys surrounding her, but by the weight of expectations and protocols that governed every aspect of her life. Sergeant Williams watched as the 8-year-old princess struggled to maintain her composure while facing what was clearly becoming harassment from her own family members. His jaw tightened as he assessed the situation. These boys were using their family connection and Charlotte's gentle nature against her. "I think we should all calm down," Williams said, his voice carrying the authority of years of military training. "We are calm," James replied with a smirk. "We're just having a conversation with our cousin. You know, family bonding." But Charlotte's distress was becoming more obvious by the moment. Her small hands were shaking as she tried to stop crying, and her breathing was becoming irregular. "Please," she managed to say between small sobs, "just let me go." The boys exchanged glances, and, for a moment, Williams hoped they might show some compassion for their younger relative. But, instead, James's smile grew wider. "Oh, now she's begging," he said. "That's not very royal behavior, is it?" That's when Charlotte completely broke down. The stress of trying to be perfect, the pressure of royal expectations, and the cruelty of children who should have been her allies all crashed down on her at once. She began crying in earnest, her small body shaking with sobs. "I want my mummy," she cried out, no longer caring about maintaining royal dignity. "I want to go to my mummy." The sound of the young princess's anguished cries echoed across the empty courtyard, and Sergeant Williams knew that something had to be done immediately. Sergeant Williams felt his heart break as he watched Princess Charlotte's complete breakdown. In his 15 years of service, he had protected the royal family through many situations, but nothing had prepared him for watching a child suffer emotional torment from her own relatives. The boys seemed momentarily shocked by the intensity of Charlotte's crying. But instead of showing remorse, James appeared to be enjoying the power he held over her emotions. "Wow, look at that," he said to his brothers. "All we did was talk to her, and she's having a complete meltdown. Maybe she's not fit to be a future queen after all." Marcus laughed nervously. "Yeah, imagine if the newspapers could see the princess now." That comment made Charlotte cry even harder. The idea of her private pain becoming public humiliation was too much for her young mind to handle. Williams knew he was in an impossible situation. These boys were family members, and any action he took could have serious consequences for his career. But, watching Charlotte's distress, he realized there were some things more important than following protocol. "Boys," he said with ice in his voice, "I strongly suggest you move away from Her Highness immediately." James looked at him with teenage defiance. "Or what? You'll tell our parents? They already know we don't like the way Charlotte gets all the attention just because she was born into the main line." "That's not her fault," Williams replied firmly. "Isn't it?" Oliver chimed in. "She could choose not to act all special and perfect all the time." Charlotte was now sitting on the edge of the fountain, her whole body trembling with sobs. She had given up trying to stop crying and had retreated into herself, making herself as small as possible. Williams knelt down beside her. "Your Highness, would you like me to call your parents?" Through her tears, Charlotte managed to nod. All she wanted was to feel safe again. But James wasn't finished. "Oh, perfect. Run to Mummy and Daddy. Tell them how the mean boys were talking to you. I'm sure they'll fix everything like they always do." "You don't understand," Charlotte whispered through her sobs. "I never asked for any of this. I never asked to be different." "But you are different," Marcus said. "And you like it. You like being better than everyone else." "No, I don't," Charlotte cried out. "I hate it sometimes. I hate that I can't just be normal." Her honest admission seemed to hang in the air. For a moment, even the boys were quiet, perhaps realizing they had pushed too far. Williams pulled out his radio to call for backup and to notify the palace that there was a situation requiring immediate attention. But, as he raised it to his mouth, James made a fateful decision. "Give me that," the boy demanded, reaching for the radio. "Step back," Williams commanded, but James was already lunging forward. In the struggle that followed, the radio fell to the ground and skittered across the cobblestones. James and Marcus both dove for it, and in the chaos, Oliver grabbed Charlotte's arm roughly. "You're coming with us," he said. "If you tell anyone about this, we'll say you started it." Charlotte tried to pull away, but Oliver's grip was tight and painful. "You're hurting me," she gasped. That's when Sergeant Williams saw red. This had gone far beyond childish teasing or even bullying. These boys were now physically restraining a member of the royal family against her will. Williams reached for his service rifle, a ceremonial weapon that was nonetheless real and loaded as per security protocols. The sound of the bolt action being engaged echoed sharply across the courtyard. "Release Her Highness immediately," he commanded, his voice carrying the full weight of military authority. The boys froze. Even in their young arrogance, they understood the seriousness of an armed guard drawing his weapon. "You can't shoot us," James said, but his voice now carried uncertainty instead of confidence. "We're family. I am sworn to protect the royal family from all threats, foreign and domestic," Williams replied, keeping his rifle pointed skyward but clearly ready. "Release the princess now." Oliver immediately let go of Charlotte's arm and stepped back. The girl fell to her knees beside the fountain, exhausted from the emotional and now physical ordeal. "This is crazy," Marcus whispered. "He's actually threatening us with a gun." "He won't use it," James said. But he too had backed away from Charlotte. Williams kept the rifle ready as he knelt beside the princess again. "Your Highness, are you injured?" Charlotte shook her head, but she was still crying and shaking. The red marks on her arm where Oliver had grabbed her were already beginning to show. "Look what you've done," Williams said to the boys, gesturing to Charlotte's obvious distress and the marks on her arm. "You've terrified and hurt a child." "We didn't mean to hurt her," Oliver said, suddenly, looking much younger and more frightened. "But you did," Williams replied. "And you would have continued if I hadn't stopped you." James was still trying to maintain his defiant attitude. "You're in trouble now. Wait until our parents hear that you pulled a gun on us." "Let them hear it," Williams said calmly. "And let them also hear about how you physically grabbed and threatened their cousin." The sound of running footsteps announced the arrival of additional security personnel, alerted by the commotion. 2 more guards appeared around the corner, followed closely by a palace footman who had heard Charlotte's crying from inside. Sergeant Williams, report, called out Captain Hayes, the senior guard on duty. 3 juveniles were harassing Her Highness Princess Charlotte, Williams replied, not lowering his rifle. When they began physically restraining her against her will, I drew my weapon to ensure her safety. Captain Hayes quickly assessed the scene. Charlotte crying on the ground with visible marks on her arm, 3 boys standing at a distance looking frightened and defiant, and Williams maintaining a protective stance with his rifle ready. "Secure the area," Hayes commanded the other guards. "And someone get the princess consort immediately." The footman was already hurrying back toward the palace to fetch Charlotte's mother. James tried one more time to control the narrative. "This is all being blown out of proportion. We were just playing around." And he went crazy with his gun. But Captain Hayes had been trained to read situations, and the evidence was clear. Charlotte's distress was real. The marks on her arm were real, and 3 boys had been found surrounding her in obvious confrontation. "Young gentleman," Hayes said formally, "you will remain here until your parents arrive to collect you." "You can't keep us here," Marcus protested. "Actually, we can," Hayes replied. "This is royal property, and you have apparently assaulted a member of the royal family." The word assault seemed to hit the boys like a cold slap. For the first time, they began to understand that their actions might have serious consequences. Charlotte had gradually stopped crying, but she remained on the ground, emotionally and physically exhausted. Williams finally lowered his rifle but remained close to her, ready to respond if the boys tried anything else. "Your Highness," he said gently, "your mother is coming. You're safe now." Charlotte looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved me." Those simple words from the 8-year-old princess made everything clear to Williams. He had done the right thing, regardless of what consequences might follow. The sound of heeled shoes clicking rapidly across the cobblestones announced the arrival of Catherine, Princess of Wales. When she saw her daughter sitting on the ground with tear-stained cheeks and red marks on her arm, her maternal instincts overrode all royal protocol. "Charlotte," she called out, rushing to her daughter's side and gathering her into a protective embrace. "Mummy," Charlotte sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "They wouldn't let me leave. They said mean things and grabbed me." Catherine's eyes flashed with anger as she looked at the 3 boys who had tormented her daughter. Then, she turned to Sergeant Williams, who was standing at attention beside them. "Sergeant, please tell me exactly what happened here." Sergeant Williams stood at attention as he prepared to give his account to the Princess of Wales. Catherine held Charlotte protectively in her arms, her daughter still trembling from the ordeal. "Ma'am," Williams began formally, "I encountered Her Highness Princess Charlotte in the garden this morning during her usual early walk. She was peacefully feeding the ducks when 3 young gentlemen arrived and began what I can only describe as systematic harassment." Catherine's jaw tightened as she listened, gently stroking Charlotte's hair. Williams continued. "They surrounded her, blocked her path when she tried to leave, made threats about throwing her in the fountain, and mocked her when she became distressed. When she began crying and asking to go home, they increased their taunting rather than showing any remorse." "That's not true," James interrupted. "We were just talking to her. She's the one who started crying for no reason." Catherine's eyes flashed dangerously. "Young man, you will not speak unless spoken to." "Continue, Sergeant." "When I attempted to call for assistance, there was a physical altercation over my radio. During this chaos, one of the boys grabbed Her Highness's arm forcefully and threatened her with retaliation if she reported their behavior. At that point, I drew my weapon to ensure her immediate safety." The gravity of those words settled over everyone present. Drawing a weapon was not a decision any guard made lightly. Catherine examined the red marks on Charlotte's arm, her anger growing. "Charlotte, sweetheart, can you tell me what happened in your own words?" Charlotte looked up at her mother with eyes still red from crying. "They said I wasn't really special, that I was just pretending to be better than everyone. They said they wanted to see if I could swim, and when I tried to leave, they wouldn't let me. We didn't say anything wrong," Oliver protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "They said," Charlotte continued, her voice getting stronger, "that I needed to learn to stop hiding behind guards. And when I started crying, they said I wasn't fit to be queen someday." Catherine's protective instincts were in full force now. "And when you tried to leave?" "Oliver grabbed my arm really tight and said I had to come with them. He said if I told anyone, they would say I started it." Charlotte touched the red marks on her arm. It really hurt. Catherine turned to Sergeant Williams. "And that's when you drew your weapon?" "Yes, ma'am. I am sworn to protect the royal family from all threats. When I witnessed what appeared to be a kidnapping attempt against Her Highness, I responded accordingly." The word kidnapping made all 3 boys go pale. They had not thought of their actions in such serious terms. At that moment, the sound of multiple footsteps announced the arrival of more family members. Prince William came striding across the courtyard, having been summoned from his morning meetings. Behind him came Queen Camilla, looking stern and worried. "What on earth is going on here?" William demanded as he saw his daughter in Catherine's arms and 3 boys standing under guard. Camilla's eyes immediately went to her grandsons. "James, Marcus, Oliver, what have you done?" Before the boys could answer, Captain Hayes stepped forward. "Your Royal Highness, Your Majesty, there has been an incident involving harassment and physical assault of Princess Charlotte by these 3 juveniles." William's expression darkened as he knelt beside his wife and daughter. "Charlotte, are you hurt?" "My arm hurts where Oliver grabbed me," Charlotte said quietly. "But mostly I was just really scared." William examined the marks on his daughter's arm, and his face showed barely controlled fury. "These marks will need to be photographed and documented," he said to Captain Hayes. "Documented?" Camilla asked with concern. "This appears to be a criminal matter. William replied coldly. Assault on a member of the royal family is a serious offense, regardless of the perpetrator's age or family connections. James finally seemed to realize the severity of their situation. Uncle William, we didn't mean to hurt her. We were just playing around. Playing around? Catherine said incredulously, still holding Charlotte close. You surrounded her, threatened her, made her cry, and then physically restrained her when she tried to escape. What part of that sounds like playing to you? Marcus began to cry. We're sorry. We didn't know it would get this bad. You didn't know that hurting and frightening a little girl would get this bad. William asked with disbelief. Camilla looked devastated as she listened to the accounts of her grandson's behavior. Boys, is this true? Did you really do all of these things? Oliver, the youngest, finally broke down completely. Yes, Grandmama. We did it. But James said it would be funny. He said Charlotte needed to be taken down a peg. James shot his younger brother a furious look, but the damage was done. James, Camilla said sternly, did you plan this? Did you deliberately target Charlotte? James's silence was answer enough. William stood up, his decision clear. Catherine, please take Charlotte inside, and have the palace physician examine her arm. I want everything documented properly. William, Camilla said cautiously, surely we can handle this as a family matter. No, William replied firmly. This stopped being a family matter when they physically assaulted my daughter. Sergeant Williams was completely justified in his actions, and I intend to commend him for his service. Williams looked surprised. He had expected to face disciplinary action for drawing his weapon. You protected my daughter when she needed protection most, William continued. That is exactly what we expect from our security personnel. Charlotte looked up at Sergeant Williams from her mother's arms. Thank you for keeping me safe, she said softly. It was my honor, Your Highness, Williams replied with a respectful bow. Camilla was struggling with the situation. These were her beloved grandsons, but their behavior was inexcusable. What happens now? Now, Williams said, these boys will face appropriate consequences for their actions. They will be removed from palace grounds immediately, and their future visits will depend entirely on their ability to show genuine remorse and change behavior. But their family, Camilla protested weakly. Family doesn't give anyone the right to hurt children, Catherine said firmly as she stood with Charlotte in her arms. If anything, family should protect and nurture each other. James made one last desperate attempt to minimize their actions. She's fine. Look, she's not even crying anymore. We didn't really hurt her. The callousness of that statement shocked everyone present. Charlotte looked directly at James with a maturity beyond her 8 years. You did hurt me. You hurt my feelings, you hurt my arm, and you made me feel scared and alone. Just because I'm not crying anymore doesn't mean what you did was okay. The simple dignity of her response showed everyone present exactly why Sergeant Williams had been right to protect her. William placed a gentle hand on his daughter's head. Charlotte, you handled this situation with more grace than you should have had to. I'm proud of how brave you were. Sergeant Williams was the brave one, Charlotte replied. He helped me when no one else could. As the family began to disperse, with the boys being escorted away by their grandmother and additional security, Williams remained at his post. Captain Hayes approached him. Sergeant, you'll need to file a complete incident report, but I want you to know that your actions today were exemplary. You protected a member of the royal family when she was in genuine distress and potential danger. Williams nodded. I would do it again, sir. That little girl needed someone to stand up for her. Later that evening, as Charlotte was getting ready for bed, she asked her mother if she could write a letter to Sergeant Williams. Of course, darling. What do you want to say? Charlotte thought for a moment. I want to thank him for showing me that even when people try to make you feel small and scared, there are still good people who will stand up for what's right. Catherine smiled at her daughter's wisdom. That's a beautiful message, Charlotte. As Charlotte wrote her letter in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, she thought about the lesson she had learned that day. Being royal meant many things, but most importantly, it meant treating others with kindness and standing up for those who needed protection. The next morning, Sergeant Williams found the letter waiting for him at his station. In it, Princess Charlotte had drawn a picture of him in his red uniform, standing tall and proud. Below the drawing, in her neat handwriting, she had written, Thank you for being my hero when I needed one most. I will never forget your kindness. With gratitude and friendship, Princess Charlotte. Williams carefully folded the letter and put it in his uniform pocket, right over his heart. It would remain there for every shift he worked, a reminder of why he had chosen to serve and protect the royal family. The incident led to new protocols about family visits and additional security measures for the younger royals. But, more importantly, it reinforced the understanding that protecting the royal family meant protecting them from all threats, even those that came from within their own extended family. Princess Charlotte returned to her morning walks in the garden, but now she did so with the confidence that came from knowing good people would always step forward to defend what was right. And Sergeant Williams continued his duties with the knowledge that sometimes the most important battles are fought not against foreign enemies, but in defense of innocence and dignity in quiet palace courtyards.